Imagine standing face to face with a creature so massive, it dwarfs the tallest humans. Its bones could build a house, its footprints could hold a bathtub. These aren't scenes from a fantasy movie, but tales echoing through history. Ancient giants, were they real or just figments of overactive imaginations? Today, we are diving into the mysteries, the myths, and the archaeological evidence that might just change what you thought you knew about our past. Stick around, because this isn't just a story about giants. It's a journey into the heart of human history, where fact and fiction blur, and the truth is often stranger than legend. Introduce ancient giant legends. Show global myths describing giant-like beings. Throughout history, tales of giants have echoed across cultures, from the towering titans of Greek mythology to the colossal Jotnar of Norse lore. These stories often depict beings of immense size and strength, sometimes friendly, often fearsome. In Greek mythology, the Titans were a race of powerful deities who ruled before the Olympian gods. They were described as larger than life, both literally and figuratively, embodying the raw, untamed forces of nature. Similarly, the Jotnar, or frost giants, in Norse mythology were formidable creatures associated with chaos and the wild aspects of the world. These giants were often portrayed as adversaries of the gods, embodying the untamed and unpredictable elements of existence. In many indigenous cultures, stories of giants serve as explanations for natural phenomena and geological features. For instance, the Maori people of New Zealand have legends about the Pachupirahi, spirits or beings often described as tall and fair-skinned, inhabiting the mountains and forests. These beings were believed to possess supernatural powers and were sometimes associated with the creation of the landscape. Similarly, in Native American folklore, various tribes have tales of giant-like beings, such as the Wendigo, a creature often depicted as a tall, emaciated figure with supernatural strength and insatiable hunger. These stories often reflect the deep connection between the natural world and the spiritual beliefs of the people. Giants also appear in the myths and legends of Africa, where they are often depicted as powerful and sometimes benevolent figures. In Yoruba mythology, the Orisha Shango, a deity associated with thunder and lightning, is sometimes described as a giant due to his immense power and influence. In West African folklore, the Anansi stories from the Akan people of Ghana and Ivory Coast feature a trickster spider, but some versions of these tales include giant-like beings that interact with Anansi. These giants are often portrayed as wise and cunning, adding layers of complexity to the narratives. In the Americas, the legends of the Patagonian giants have captivated imaginations for centuries. European explorers returning from the southern tip of South America spoke of encountering tall, towering figures, often referred to as Patagonians. These accounts, while likely exaggerated, contributed to the global mythos of giants. The Patagonians were described as being over 7 feet tall, with some reports suggesting they were even taller. These stories, whether based on factual encounters or not, highlight the universal human fascination with the idea of giants. Explain why so many unrelated cultures share similar stories, common fears, or shared memories. Across the globe, from the indigenous tribes of the Americas to the ancient civilizations of the Mediterranean and the remote islands of the Pacific, stories of giants persist. These tales often share striking similarities, despite the vast distances and lack of contact between these cultures. So, why do so many unrelated cultures share similar stories of giants? The answer likely lies in a combination of common fears and shared human experiences. Humans, regardless of culture or geography, share fundamental fears and anxieties. The fear of the unknown, the vulnerability of smallness, and the threat of the powerful are universal. Giants, in many cultures, embody these fears. They are often depicted as powerful, sometimes benevolent, but more frequently malevolent beings that threaten the safety and well-being of ordinary people. This commonality suggests that the giant mythos is a natural outgrowth of the human psyche, a way to externalize and grapple with our deepest fears. Moreover, these stories often serve as cautionary tales or explanations for natural phenomena. For instance, many cultures use giants to explain geological features like mountains, valleys, or even earthquakes. The shared human experience of trying to understand and explain the natural world could account for the similarities in these myths. Additionally, the concept of giants might stem from encounters with larger-than-average humans or animals. For example, early humans might have encountered large mammals like mammoths or dinosaurs, which could have inspired tales of giants. Similarly, some researchers suggest that the remains of large prehistoric animals, discovered by ancient peoples, might have been interpreted as the bones of giants. Another factor to consider is the power of storytelling itself. Stories evolve and change as they are passed down through generations, often incorporating elements from other tales. This process, known as cultural diffusion, can explain why similar stories emerge in unrelated cultures. For instance, the story of the giant Goliath in the Bible shares similarities with the Norse myth of the frost giant Wymir, despite the vast cultural and geographical differences between these traditions. This suggests that the giant mythos is not a static entity but a dynamic narrative that adapts and evolves over time. Review archaeological giant skeleton claims. How many were hoaxes and why they spread? When European settlers arrived in North America, they encountered mounds and burial sites that contained larger-than-average human remains. These findings sparked widespread interest and speculation. Many of these giant skeletons were initially reported by early archaeologists and settlers. However, upon closer examination, many of these claims turned out to be hoaxes or misinterpretations. One of the most famous cases involves the Cardiff giant, a supposed petrified giant discovered in 1869. The giant was actually a cleverly carved statue made of gypsum. The hoax was so convincing that it drew thousands of visitors and even sparked scientific debates. The creators of the Cardiff giant, George Hull and his accomplices, admitted to the hoax later. This case illustrates how easily misinformation can spread, especially when it aligns with popular myths or cultural narratives. Another example is the New York giant skeleton, which was allegedly discovered in 1883. This skeleton was said to be over 12 feet tall. Investigations later revealed that it was a composite of several skeletons, likely assembled to create the illusion of a giant. The hoax was perpetrated by a group of con artists looking to profit from the public's fascination with giants. Such cases highlight the importance of critical examination and verification in archaeological findings. The spread of these hoaxes can be attributed to several factors. First, the idea of giants has deep roots in mythology and folklore. Many cultures have stories of giants, making the concept familiar and intriguing. Second, the scientific community in the 19th century was still developing. There were fewer established methods for verifying the authenticity of archaeological finds. This lack of standardization allowed hoaxes to thrive. Additionally, the sensational nature of giant skeletons made them perfect for media attention. Newspapers and other outlets often exaggerated claims, further fueling public interest and belief. In some cases, the giant skeletons were not outright hoaxes but rather misinterpretations. For instance, conditions like acromegaly, a hormonal disorder that causes abnormal growth, can result in unusually tall individuals. Skeletons of people with this condition might have been misidentified as giants. Similarly, burial practices that involved stacking bones or placing them in specific arrangements could have been misconstrued as evidence of giant skeletons. These misunderstandings were often perpetuated by a lack of knowledge about human anatomy and burial customs. The legacy of these hoaxes and misinterpretations continues to influence public perception. Many people still believe in the existence of ancient giants, often citing these historical cases as evidence. While modern archaeology has debunked most of these claims, the allure of giants persists in popular culture. This enduring fascination underscores the power of myth and the importance of critical thinking in evaluating historical and archaeological claims. Discuss misidentified bones, how mammoth and whale fossils were mistaken for giants. In the past, people often stumbled upon large, unusual bones and didn't quite know what to make of them. These bones, which turned out to be from mammoths or whales, were sometimes mistaken for the remains of giants. This mix-up happened for a few reasons, and it's a fascinating glimpse into how people tried to make sense of the world around them. Mammoth bones, in particular, were a common source of confusion. These prehistoric relatives of elephants were enormous, with some species reaching up to 13 feet tall at the shoulder. When their bones were discovered, people had never seen anything like them. They didn't know what mammoths were, so they came up with all sorts of explanations. Some thought they were the remains of giant humans, perhaps even biblical figures like the Nephilim. Others believed they were the bones of elephants that had escaped from menageries or circuses, not realizing that elephants hadn't been in Europe for thousands of years. Whale bones also caused quite a stir. Whales are the largest animals on Earth, and their bones are massive. When these bones washed up on shore or were found buried inland, people were baffled. They couldn't imagine an animal so large, so they assumed the bones must belong to something else. Some thought they were the remains of sea monsters or other mythical creatures. Others believed they were the bones of giants that had drowned at sea. It wasn't until people started studying these bones more closely that they realized they were looking at the remains of whales. This mix-up wasn't just a matter of ignorance. It was a result of people trying to fit new information into their existing understanding of the world. They didn't have the scientific knowledge we have today, so they made educated guesses based on what they knew. It's easy to laugh at these mistakes now, but it's also a reminder of how much we've learned and how our understanding of the world has evolved. Plus, these mix-ups often led to some pretty wild stories and legends that have become a part of our cultural history. Analyze ancient texts. What giants symbolized in religious and political narratives. Ancient texts often depict giants as more than just towering figures. They are complex symbols woven into the fabric of religious and political narratives. In many cultures, giants represent chaos and the untamed forces of nature. The Bible, for instance, portrays giants like the Nephilim as offspring of fallen angels and human women, embodying the corruption and disorder that threatened the early world. These stories served as moral lessons, warning against the dangers of straying from divine law. Similarly, in Greek mythology, the Titans, who were overthrown by the Olympian gods, symbolized the old order being replaced by a new, more orderly one. This shift often mirrored political changes, where new rulers sought to legitimize their power by associating it with divine favor. Giants also frequently appear as symbols of opposition and conquest. In Norse mythology, the Jotnar, or giants, were often at odds with the gods, representing the eternal struggle between order and chaos. These narratives reinforce the idea that the gods, and by extension, the ruling classes, were necessary to maintain cosmic balance. In political terms, this could translate to the idea that the current rulers were essential for societal stability. The giants, then, became a metaphor for any forces that threatened this stability, whether external enemies or internal dissent. By portraying these threats as monstrous and irrational, the texts justified the actions taken to suppress them. Moreover, giants in ancient texts often carried religious significance, serving as intermediaries between the human and divine realms. In Mesopotamian mythology, the Anunnaki were a group of deities who were sometimes described as giants. They were believed to have played a crucial role in the creation of humanity and the establishment of civilization. This dual nature of giants, both destructive and creative, highlighted their symbolic importance. They were not just mindless brutes but complex figures that embodied the duality of existence. This complexity allowed them to be used flexibly in various narratives, adapting to the needs of different religious and political contexts. The political use of giant symbolism is perhaps most evident in the way ancient rulers employed these myths to bolster their authority. By associating themselves with the gods who had defeated the giants, rulers could present themselves as protectors of order and civilization. This was not just a matter of personal prestige but a way to legitimize their rule and maintain social hierarchy. The giants, in this context, became a tool for reinforcing the status quo and discouraging rebellion. They were a reminder of the consequences of challenging the established order, both in the mythical past and the present. Show propaganda examples. How rulers exaggerated enemy size to boost their own status. Throughout history, rulers and leaders have often employed propaganda to bolster their own status and legitimacy. One common tactic involved exaggerating the size and strength of their enemies. This strategy served multiple purposes. It made victories seem more impressive, instilled fear in potential adversaries, and reinforced the ruler's image as a formidable protector. By portraying enemies as larger-than-life figures, leaders could justify their own power and the resources they devoted to defense. A classic example comes from ancient Rome. Roman art and literature frequently depicted their enemies as towering giants. This was not just artistic license, it was a deliberate propaganda tool. By making their foes appear monstrous and overwhelming, Roman rulers could highlight their own military prowess and strategic genius. The larger the enemy, the greater the triumph when they were defeated. This tactic was especially effective in rallying public support and maintaining morale among the troops. The visual imagery of vanquishing giants reinforced the idea that Rome was invincible, a message that was crucial for maintaining control over a vast empire. Another striking example can be found in medieval Europe. Kings and nobles often commissioned artists to create tapestries, manuscripts, and sculptures that depicted their battles against exaggeratedly large enemies. These works were displayed in public spaces and castles, serving as constant reminders of the ruler's strength and the threats they had overcome. The size of the enemies in these depictions was often grossly exaggerated, making the ruler's victories seem even more heroic. This kind of propaganda was not just about boosting the ruler's ego. It was a way to legitimize their rule and justify their authority. By portraying themselves as the only ones capable of defeating such formidable foes, rulers could solidify their position and deter potential challenges. In some cases, the exaggeration of enemy size was so extreme that it bordered on the fantastical. Legends and myths often emerged from these propaganda efforts, blurring the line between fact and fiction. For instance, stories of knights battling giants became common in medieval literature, further reinforcing the idea that rulers were protectors against supernatural threats. These tales were not just entertainment, they were powerful tools for shaping public perception and reinforcing the social order. By associating themselves with the defeat of mythical giants, rulers could position themselves as almost divine figures, deserving of unwavering loyalty and support. This tactic was particularly effective in societies where superstition and mythology played a significant role in everyday life. Explore real medical conditions, gigantism, and why rare individuals became legendary. Gigantism is a rare medical condition that causes excessive growth in children and adolescents. It's typically caused by an abnormality in the pituitary gland, which produces growth hormone. When this gland produces too much hormone, it can lead to extraordinary height. This condition is different from acromegaly, which affects adults and causes enlargement of bones and tissues, but not increased height. Gigantism is incredibly rare, with only a few hundred cases documented in medical history. The most common cause is a non-cancerous tumor on the pituitary gland, but it can also be caused by other factors, such as genetic mutations. People with gigantism often grow to be significantly taller than average. For instance, the tallest person in recorded history, Robert Wadlow from the United States, reached a height of 8 feet 11 inches, 2.72 meters. He was confirmed to have gigantism due to an abnormality in his pituitary gland. Other notable examples include Andre the Giant, a professional wrestler and actor who stood at 7 feet 4 inches, 2.24 meters. These individuals often faced unique challenges due to their height, including physical discomfort, social stigma, and health complications. Despite these challenges, their extraordinary stature often made them the subject of legend and myth. The legends and myths surrounding giants can often be traced back to real individuals with gigantism. For example, the tale of the Sutton Coldfield giant in England is believed to be inspired by a man named William Evans, who was exceptionally tall. Evans was born in the 18th century and reportedly stood at 7 feet 6 inches, 2.29 meters. His height made him a local celebrity, and his story likely contributed to the legend of the Sutton Coldfield giant. Similarly, the myth of the Giant of Cerne in Dorset, England, may have been inspired by a man named John Merrick, who was also exceptionally tall. These examples illustrate how real medical conditions can inspire legendary tales. Gigantism is not just a historical phenomenon. It continues to be studied and understood by medical professionals today. Advances in medical technology have made it possible to diagnose and treat gigantism more effectively. For instance, surgery can remove tumors on the pituitary gland, and medication can help regulate growth hormone levels. Early diagnosis and treatment are crucial for managing the condition and preventing complications. Despite these advancements, gigantism remains a rare and fascinating condition that continues to capture the public imagination. Understanding the medical basis of gigantism helps separate fact from fiction and sheds light on the extraordinary lives of those affected by this condition. Conclude with scientific consensus: myths rooted in misunderstanding, fear, and storytelling. The scientific consensus on the origins of ancient giant myths is quite clear. These tales often stem from a mix of misunderstanding, fear, and the human tendency to create compelling stories. When people encounter large bones or unusual artifacts, it's natural to fill in the gaps with imagination. For instance, the discovery of large animal bones, like those of mastodons or mammoths, has been linked to stories of giants in various cultures. These bones, much larger than anything from modern animals, sparked curiosity and wonder. Over time, they became the basis for legends of towering human-like figures. Fear also plays a significant role in the creation of these myths. In many societies, the unknown is often perceived as a threat. Large, unexplained bones or structures could easily be attributed to fearsome beings. This fear is then amplified through storytelling, making the tales more vivid and enduring. For example, the discovery of large skeletons in ancient times often led to beliefs in giants as a way to explain the inexplicable. These stories served as a means to make sense of a world that was not yet fully understood. Storytelling, too, has a powerful influence on the persistence of giant myths. Humans have always been drawn to tales of the extraordinary. Giants, with their larger-than-life presence, fit perfectly into this narrative. Over generations, these stories evolve and grow, becoming deeply embedded in cultural folklore. The blending of fact and fiction makes it difficult to separate myth from reality. For example, the legend of the Nephilim in the Bible has been interpreted in various ways, often as a reference to giants. This shows how storytelling can shape beliefs and perpetuate myths over centuries. In conclusion, the scientific consensus is that myths of ancient giants are rooted in misunderstanding, fear, and storytelling. These elements combine to create enduring legends that continue to captivate the imagination. Understanding the origins of these myths helps to demystify them, revealing the human tendency to seek explanations for the unknown. By recognizing the role of these factors, we can appreciate the cultural significance of giant myths while acknowledging their lack of factual basis. This perspective allows us to enjoy the stories for what they are, a testament to human creativity and the enduring power of narrative. As we wrap up our exploration of ancient giants, let's recap what we've uncovered. We've seen how myths and legends of giants appear in cultures worldwide, from the Nephilim of the Bible to the Patagonian giants of early European explorers. We've also delved into how these tales might have been used as propaganda to inspire fear and, of course, we've looked at the archaeological evidence, those mysterious large bones and artifacts that might have sparked these stories. But here's the thing, the truth is often more fascinating than the myths. Whether these giants were real, misunderstood creatures, or simply the product of ancient imaginations, they've left us with a legacy of wonder and curiosity. They remind us that history is full of mysteries waiting to be unraveled. So, what's next? If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the enigmatic world of ancient giants, stay tuned. We've got more intriguing topics lined up that will challenge your understanding of history and archaeology. And hey, if you have any theories or stories about giants, or any other ancient mysteries, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let's keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching, and remember, the past is full of surprises. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and who knows, maybe you'll uncover the next big mystery.